You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Thank you for joining us, and I think you'll be glad you did. Today we have the second part of my in-depth conversation with Annie DiFranco. The first part, last week, ranged over a number of subjects. Why she started Righteous Babe Records at age 18, for God's sake, and the music industry and the influence of feminism on her music and her life, and being called an entrepreneur, and her theory of success, and of course Babe Fest and her new record, Binary. But this week we focus on touring, parenting, feminist writers she loves to read, the death penalty, the Righteous Babe Foundation that she started, the special intimacy she seems to have with her audience and her fans, issues of monogamy and non-monogamy, and her greatest regret and greatest pride in life. So, there's that. And also there's Surrealism Corner, and our new little feature, A Word from My Lower Self. But before we get to any of that, we're going to go inside the headlines. Let's start abroad, and let's start with a win. Women in Saudi Arabia will be allowed to drive, according to a royal decree issued last Tuesday, September 26th in Riyadh. This could be the most visible signal so far of a modernizing process for Saudi Arabia, with reforms implemented by the heir apparent to the throne, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The decree, signed by his father, King Salman, proclaimed that the majority of senior scholars had deemed the change legitimate under Islamic law and ordered the government ministries concerned to make whatever legal adjustments are required to implement it by June 24th of next year. The Saudi ambassador to the United States, Prince Khaled bin Salman, hailed the announcement as historic and said female drivers would not need to travel with male guardians or seek permission to obtain driver's licenses, and that women's licenses from other countries in the region would be recognized. Saudi women celebrated, and conservative clerics were livid. One, Sheikh Saad al-Hiriji, has declared that women, quote, don't deserve to drive because they only have a quarter of a brain. Of course, Saudi women still are not permitted to marry, divorce, travel, open a bank account, apply for higher education, or get a job without permission from their male guardians, nor are they allowed to mix freely with members of the opposite sex, appear in public without wearing a full-length black abaya, have their testimony in court equal more than half that of a man's, eat at restaurants that don't have a separate designated family section, and a few other petty little problems. Nor will there be reparations to those women who were jailed, fired, divorced, exiled, lost custody of their children, and otherwise persecuted in many ways for demonstrating for their right to drive. However, when it comes to the financial area in the kingdom, there's a weird disconnect. Last month, a woman was appointed chief executive of a major Saudi bank, not one of the segregated women's banks, but a general one, a first in the country's history. That came a few days after Saudi Arabia's stock exchange appointed a woman as its chair. This is one of those items that could have been filed in the Surrealism Corner. Back in the USA, Trump fiddled with his smartphone, tweeting while Puerto Rico drowned. Hurricane Maria left behind devastation in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and especially the, quote, unincorporated territory called the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, which is less than a state but more than it was originally, a colony. Certainly the treatment of Puerto Rico in this crisis exposes Trump's attitude that it still is a colony. But he wanted to divert attention from that and from his healthcare defeat, so he picked a fight with the NFL. And more about that later on in Fighting Words. This time it was Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, who got to be the final thumbs down, damning the latest version of Obamacare repeal, joining GOP Senators John McCain and Rand Paul in providing a decisive third no vote. All of them are indebted to the leadership of the resistance, which mobilized the instant the bill was introduced. McConnell triaged the bill and has moved on to try to pass tax cut for the wealthy legislation misnamed reform. Bad times for poor Mitch, whose chosen candidate for Senate from Alabama, Luther Strange, lost decisively to former Judge Roy Moore in the GOP primary to replace Jeff Sessions. Unless the Democrats can turn this blood-red state purple and trounce Moore in the general election, Moore, twice removed from the bench for defying the law, will enter the U.S. Senate. Trump half-heartedly had backed Strange, but surely you know who publicly backed Moore? Steve Bannon, risen from the crypt. The Trump administration announced it is rescinding crucial Obama-era school sexual assault guidance and issuing a question-and-answer document while a formal review is undertaken. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos has claimed a new direction is needed to balance the rights of the victims and the accused. The highly contentious shift under Title IX affects all the nation's colleges, universities, and K-12 schools. It is no hyperbole to say that this is a disaster for victims of sexual assault and harassment throughout the entire American education system. Ivanka Trump and hubby Jared Kushner used a private email account for White House business on numerous occasions, Politico reported. They even set up a private email server before starting work at the White House in January. Kushner's lawyer acknowledged the emails, saying Kushner had sent or received approximately 100 work-related emails using the account. And it turns out that Reince Priebus, Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller, Gary Cohn, and other senior Trump advisors did the same thing. This gives new meaning to the double standard. Lock them up. Lock them up. The Detroit Free Press reports that the full consequences of the Flint water crisis are still coming to light. Fertility rates dropped 12% while women in the city were exposed to increased lead in their drinking water. That's according to a new study by assistant professors and health economists David Slusky at Kansas University and Daniel Grossman at West Virginia University. Fetal death rates rose by 58%. And even so-called healthy babies born in Flint after the switch to river water weighed nearly 150 grams lighter than those born in other areas of Michigan and gained less weight postpartum. Twitter has decided to change the one element making its services endurable, the brevity of a tweet. The company is experimenting with doubling the maximum tweet length to 280 characters. This change, currently in beta testing, means, among other things, that Trump will have greatly expanded room from which to spew hatred. But there's hope. A new study by researchers at Emory University, Georgia Institute of Technology, and the University of Michigan suggests that the most effective anti-hate online tactic is a simple, obvious one: identifying and shutting down the spaces where hateful speech occurs, rather than targeting bad actors individually or in groups. The researchers analyzed 100 million posts originating on two forums on Reddit. Forums Fat People Hate and Coontown were among several that Reddit administrators had banned in 2015 as part of a site-wide crackdown on toxicity. In case you didn't already pick this up from the names, Fat People Hate was devoted to photos that mocked overweight people, and Coontown brimmed with virulent racism. Researchers generated a list of hateful terms used on the two forums and tracked the use of those terms across Reddit. They also compared the activity of users who posted hateful terms before the bans with those users' activities after to determine whether they had infiltrated other Reddit forums. The goal was to figure out what happened when these toxic communities were shut down. Did the amount of hateful language on Reddit decrease? Did users of hateful forums migrate to other parts of the site? Did any of them change their behavior as a result of the bans? Well, the study found that to a large extent the bans worked. Some users who had posted offensive material on the forums that were shut down stopped using Reddit entirely, yes. But of those who continued to use the site, many migrated to other forums but did not bring significant amounts of toxic speech with them, and the forums they moved to did not become more hateful as a result of their presence. Overall, the users who stayed on Reddit after the bans took effect decreased their use of hate speech by more than 80%. So, those Silicon Valley giants aren't as helpless as they've claimed, after all, in stopping their platforms from becoming bigotry launchers. Well, well, well. It's break time here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and coming right up is the Surrealism Corner. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. The corner is jam-packed today, ranging from the ridiculous to the absurd. Most of it plain ridiculous, but some of it encouragingly absurd. In the former category, 31% of the actors cast in British films produced in 1913 were women. That's according to a recent British Film Institute study. That figure in 2017, well, it had declined to 30%. Ain't progress grand? The Environmental Protection Agency has contracted with Acoustical Solutions, a company in Richmond, Virginia, for $25,000 of taxpayer money to build a custom soundproof communications booth for Scott Pruitt, the Trump-appointed EPA administrator. His spokeswoman, Liz Bowman, claimed a great need to guard against hacking and eavesdropping. Pruitt is also the first EPA administrator to have round-the-clock security and to be accompanied by armed guards even inside the agency building. After all, a guy needs some privacy when he's supposed to be defending the environment against corporate energy interests and other polluters, but spends hours on the phone making deals with them. Gee, be fair. The boys got their boxers in a twist at Beth Mowins, the first woman to call a game on Monday Night Football, so they took to social media to denounce her voice. It was shrill, it was grating, it was like my ex-wife nagging, it was like my mom yelling at me, and so forth. They also claimed that their comments had nothing to do with her being a woman. Veteran NFL reporter Andrea Creamer said she was hardly surprised by the backlash against Mowins' play-by-play on football's biggest stage, saying, quote, "I have no doubt that hating the sound of her voice is code for I hate that there was a woman announcing football." One of the many positives about Beth doing the game, in addition to her being a top-notch, seasoned broadcaster, is that she has a great voice that cuts through all the ambient noise in the stadium, close quote. The ESPN baseball analyst Jessica Mendoza has also been the target of social media scorn, despite high praise from many of her colleagues and from former players. These online critics have been happy enough to put up with Howard Cosell's nasal whine for decades, so let her rip, Beth. By the way, did you know there was a time when women were kept off radio because it was thought our voices were pitched so high they would come across as shrill? Ah, shrill, the favorite adjective of woman-hating IQ-challenged males. What would they do without shrill? Do I sound shrill? 62 ultra-conservative Roman Catholic clergy and scholars signed a 25-page filial correction statement accusing Pope Francis of spreading heresy for having published his ecclesiastical letter, The Joy of Love. That's a document largely viewed as his trying to reach out to divorced and remarried Catholics. A press release accompanying the accusatory letter calls it an epoch-making act, with no precedent since 1333. Catholic historians say that although that might be true, it overstates the actual significance. A number of the signees are members of a traditionalist group that has already broken away from the Catholic Church. And Ettore Gotti Tedeschi, former president of the Vatican Bank, is also a signee. The clutch of cardinals who had controlled the Vatican Bank was broken up by Francis over their corrupt practices and former scandals. Still, Monsignor Robert Wister, a professor of church history at Seton Hall University, said he can't recall anything similar to the heresy letter in recent times. Pope John the 22nd was rebuked in the 1330s, yes, for teaching that the souls of the dead do not see the face of God until the Last Judgment. Wow, the things that are considered controversial. But, he said, it's really hard to make a comparison. 900 years ago, he added, most Catholics were illiterate. Now everybody is on Twitter. Close quote. Proving, I would add, that everybody is still illiterate. Anyway, Francis has not stooped to respond. Now, I'm a great fan of science, as regular listeners well know, but I'm a fan of real science, not academic dabbling. So you will understand why the following so-called theory had me clutching my ribs, doubled over with laughter, all the while gritting my teeth with rage. Don't try it. The combined contortion is less than pleasant. 3 academics writing for the London Times Education Supplement, Anna Wilson of Abertay University in Dundee, Scotland, along with Kate Wilson and David Lowe of the University of New South Wales, Canberra, Australia, have decided that boys are better at physics because they learn about projection while peeing. According to the academics, from a young age, boys are taught how to aim correctly so as not to make a mess in the bathroom, and this gives them a better understanding of projectile motion. Now, I would interject that most men seem to have forgotten this lesson by age 7, but never mind. The researchers continue, quote, playful urination practices, from seeing how high you can pee, to games such as pee-ball, where men compete using their urine to destroy a ball placed in the urinal, I didn't know there was such a game, may give boys an advantage over girls when it comes to physics, since they found that girls generally perform worse than boys in achievement on physics tests involving things that have been thrown, kicked, or fired. The researchers concluded that there is no simple way to provide girls with the same opportunities for exploring projectile motion that boys have, but that the physics syllabus could be structured differently, with other topics, such as energy conservation, taught first instead. Oh, dear God. Time for projectile vomiting. Now, here's an actual nice one. If successful, this lawsuit could upend environmental law. And several environmental law experts say the suit has a slim chance at best, but it's not laughable, just a long shot. The long shot is that the suit was filed last week in federal district court in Colorado by Jason Flores Williams, a Denver lawyer, and it names the Colorado River system as the plaintiff, citing no specific physical boundaries, and it seeks to hold the state of Colorado and Governor John Hickenlooper liable for violating the river's, quote, right to exist, flourish, regenerate, be restored, and naturally evolve, close quote. Because the river cannot appear in court, a group called Deep Green Resistance is filing the suit as an ally or so-called next friend of the waterway. If a corporation has rights, the authors argue, so too should an ancient waterway that has sustained human life for as long as it has existed in the western United States. And the claim also cites several nations whose courts or governments have recognized some rights for natural entities. In Ecuador, the Constitution now declares that nature has the right to exist, persist, maintain, and regenerate its vital cycles. In New Zealand, officials declared last March that a river used by the Maori tribe of Whanganui in the North Island is a legal person that can sue if it is harmed, and a court in the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand has called the Ganges and its main tributary, the Yamuna, to be living human entities. Good luck, Colorado River. And to wind up the Surrealism corner today, there's this. For more than a century, archaeologists and historians have assumed that the remains of a person found buried, along with arms and horses, in one of the most spectacular graves discovered in the Viking Age town of Birka in Sweden, belonged to a man. Oops! Osteology and DNA tests now prove that he was always a she, and she was most probably a powerful military leader. Quote, "It's actually a woman somewhere over the age of 30 and fairly tall, too, measuring around 170 centimeters, said Charlotte Hedenstierna Johnson, an archaeologist at Uppsala University. She was referring to the findings that were published in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. Aside from the complete warrior equipment buried along with her, she added, a sword, an axe, a spear, armor-piercing arrows, a battle knife, shields, and 2 horses. She had a board game in her lap, or more of a war-planning game used to try out battle tactics and strategies, which indicates she was a powerful military leader. She most likely planned, led, and took part in battles." Close quote. The grave, which Hedenstierna Johnson describes as the world's, quote, ultimate warrior Viking grave, close quote, was discovered and excavated by Swedish archaeologist Hjalmar Stolpe at the end of the 19th century. Because of the manly warrior equipment found in the grave, it was assumed, rather than proven, that the remains were that of a man. Though some Viking women buried with weapons are known, a female warrior of this importance had never been determined, and Viking scholars have been reluctant to acknowledge the agency of women with weapons. The new Viking scholar, she said, period. Gee, reluctant to acknowledge the agency of women with weapons. I wonder why. Will someone please pass me my battle axe? Surreal, surreal, surreal. And this is Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. We're going to take another quick break, but we will return in just a moment with my in-depth, exclusive interview with Ani DiFranco.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we are back again. And it's time for the second part of my conversation with Ani DiFranco. In part 1 last week, well, by the way, if you missed part 1 or you want to rehear it, you can always find it at WMClive.com and or on iTunes. And in that conversation, she called in from the road where she's touring. In that conversation, she and I ranged over so many issues and went so deep and so high. We wound up in outer space talking about physics, literally. So this part 2, begins with my trying to get us back down to earth, kind of, because I wanted to talk more about her brand new record just out, Binary, on her own label, Righteous Babe Records, and all the other things that we do finally get to. She's a remarkable person, rebel, artist, feminist, musician, and unique as they come. And so here she is, Ani DiFranco, Righteous Babe herself. You're going to be, I'm trying to be practical here, because otherwise the two of us will spin off to Mars. You're going to be touring a lot through the rest of September and all of October and most of November, right?
Yeah, I'll be out and about.
All right. I mean, and when you go on tour, I know I ask this because, as you mentioned, the personal is political. When you got two young kids now, like 10 or 12 and 4 or 5, something like that. Did they come with you when you go on tour, or do you fly home each night?
No. Yeah, no. I am the disappearing. My family has the disappearing mommy syndrome.
Oh, that's
happening. Yeah. My daughter toured with me for the first 3.5 years of her existence before she entered school and civilian life.
Right.
But yeah, these days I travel pretty much by myself. Sometimes my daughter comes. Rarely I'll bring the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like in anybody's job, there's sacrifices.
Yeah, well,
so, no. Yeah, my family has to make some of them.
I did a mix of it myself, and everybody survived intact. And, I mean, sometimes in my case, it was scarier for my kid to travel with me because he saw protesters outside saying, hang the bitch, or, whatever. And so if you're a little person, it can scare the hell out of you. But people can find out about where, Ani is playing and when all around the country for the next basically 3 months. From on the website AniDiFranco.com. You tour a lot, and how do you keep? I don't know how else to put it, but sane, and not from gibbering in a curled up in a fetal position.
Yeah, well, if you're me and you look at my schedule these days, it feels like I'm hardly touring at all. Compared to what my life used to be.
I know.
I actually feel more like a blubbering, insane person when I'm at home for too long, because there's something about traveling and engaging with people and just being out and about. You don't even have to talk to anybody. You can feel things. You can sense things. You can, and then if you do it for enough years and you return to the same places and countries and cultures, you observe shifts in dynamic and vibe. And I love that. I just love feeling a part of the world and feeling like I'm have some purpose, and all of that sort of helps me. No, much more than sort of sitting back and yelling at my TV or whatever the alternative.
No, I can understand that. And also you go through cycles, at least I do. I mean, I spent almost all of the 80s on the road and a hell of a big chunk of the 90s. And since then I've been nesting. I mean, I'm older also, but I've been nesting more and growing a garden and you appreciate the differences. In one you give out a lot of energy and get back a lot. In the other, the energy gets to sort of germinate, if you know what I mean, and rise like yeast or something. And that's important too.
I'm now that I have kids and they call me home, and they keep me home for good stretches. I'm beginning to really understand the value of what you're saying. And in fact, when I look back now, I wish maybe also that I had pulled back of my own accord more along the way and gotten the hell off stage and let myself just sit down and shut up for, more.
But then we would have had less of you. No, everything in its place and its time. Don't be silly. Two more questions, as long as I can hang on to you. One, say a few words about the Righteous Babe Foundation. I think there are probably people who don't even know that you set up a foundation that funds good people from all good causes. So say a word or two.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty darn broad, the things that we've supported over the years. I mean, I've been against the death penalty since I thought about it as a teenager.
Me too. And it was my very first issue. Me too.
Oh, yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, I mean, what could be more obvious?
Yeah.
Then violence, to respond to violence with violence is not the answer. Yeah, so, right, for instance, we have, having gotten involved in that world a little bit and the people who do criminal defense work,
Yeah.
I mean, I've directly supported, people doing that work, lawyers who, if I just had $1,000, I could go investigate this case and maybe save this individual's life. I mean, it's terrifying that it comes down to this,
Yep, but it
in
does.
the United States of America. But of course, and then many things, just women's issues, queer issues. There's been just a lot of different people who I have naturally intersected with along the way and, sort of use the foundation to support beyond, my own personal activism.
If you're not careful, they will soon add to the multisyllable wheelbarrow word entrepreneur. They will add philanthropist. I mean, they manage to make boring whatever revolutionary acts one devises. Kind of their whole genius in life. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question. I've asked this question. I've asked this of women who were prime ministers and women who were couldn't read and were tilling rice fields living in tin huts, and I've always had I've learned a lot from their answers. I mean, they've been beautiful, amazing answers. So no pressure, mind you.
Yeah, right.
but they're woman's kind of questions. What if you had to name one thing in your life, and you can switch the order around if there's anything you want, that you most regretted, or were saddest about, what would that be? And if you had to name one thing in your life that was the thing you were proudest of, what might that be?
You'd think after all of my years of interviewing, I'd be prepared for such a question, but I don't know.
Well, it's not commonly asked. I mean, it's not your fault.
Yeah, right. No, it's not. It's not, indeed. What do I most regret?
Or if you have no regrets, then what makes you most sad when you think about it? I mean, some people have said, I have no regrets.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to piece apart. I'll give you this sort of the non-answer. That's okay.
That's okay.
I'll show all the politicians how it's done. I mean, I think about the things I regret, the lying, for instance, as a young person who's not naturally drawn to monogamy, I didn't know how to stand up and say, no, this is what I want. This is what I need. I don't want to be possessed by anyone for a couple decades. How about that, world? Instead of being able to articulate that or believe that it's okay, or I had to sort of sneak around and I was so afraid to hurt people that I hurt them, tenfold or something, so
right.
That kind of thing. Basically the times that I've disappointed or felt ashamed in my own behavior, or duplicity. But then I look back at all of that and I think, if I hadn't have been through all of that, I probably wouldn't, of course, gotten to where I've gotten to.
There's that.
Yeah, you have to hit bottom sometimes to really change.
Well, and you can. It's okay to, I think, to affirm all of your transformations. I mean, at least not to disown them. But at least to say, well, that fed into what and who I am. And what about the proudest, or the thing that gives you the most joy when you look back on your still very young career?
Well, I tell you, I mean, kids, of course, as a mom, you have to throw that out there. Kids are great. They're very, fulfilling, to see and contribute to a person becoming a person. And that's a thrill. But I gotta say, these moments when, and they come with frequency these days, so I'm very lucky. I've been out there long enough doing my thing and coming in contact with people through my work. And so these days, my fan interactions are much cooler than they were at one moment when I hit sort of media, sort of crossover attention, and people who are just into celebrity were all up in my grill. But now, the only people who are interested in talking to me now are people who have spent 20 years with my music and who come up to me on the street or wherever and unload a story that just makes me cry, or that and somebody who would, some woman I met in Ireland a month ago who said, I'm on the city council, I'm working on the first minute legislation of legalizing abortion in Ireland for rape, incest, or the life of the mother. They don't have that yet. And I all this is because of you, or so, and just like, yes, that's my most shining moment. That somehow, it gets me through those moments when I think, how can I go on, or what good am I? I think of those faces that I've looked into and gone, something about something I did helped that person to become themselves. And I could cry right now. Just
I'm tearing up. No, I know exactly what you mean. It's a feeling that in the vastness of the universe, and sometimes the enormous cruelties that our species can visit on itself. I mean, the good news is we learn, we change, we adapt. The bad news is we do so very slowly, and we usually wait till the last minute. But given that context, it is a connection. It's making it's with another human being, and the privilege of feeling that you've affected their lives in some positive way, or so they tell you, is an enormous, just such a gift. It's miraculous, It's the only miracle I really know, and I think we're really lucky to be able to, number one, do the work that we love and the creative, and express that creatively and connect it to the political suffering around us and solutions. But also to get to see it actually connect with other living, breathing, people. And of course, music does it even more effectively than words, and you do both, and, as well as everything else, mommy. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, just right. To have the effect of somebody's work come home to the actual person who created it.
Yeah.
And, thank you to come back from the universe is probably rare for writers and artists. And, I just reread Their Eyes Were Watching God.
And Zora Neale Hurston. Yes. Yeah.
And I just had to sit there and inhale and exhale for Zora a long time afterwards. Like, I don't know if you would have ever known in your life how much your work gave to how many.
Right.
I wish that you had, sister, but I bet you didn't. But
no, I don't think she did. Yeah. We all throw messages in a bottle, out to sea.
Right.
But I think we all in our deepest self trust that somebody somewhere is going to pick this up on some other shore, And you've thrown some brilliant, wonderful, beautiful, loving bottles out there with a hell of a lot of great messages, and more to come. And I thank you for that, just as a person and as a sister.
Thank you, Robin.
So take care of yourself. Have a wonderful tour. Have a wonderful celebration of Binary. Have a wonderful Babe Fest, and keep on keeping on, sister, because you're doing all the right stuff. Take care, and thanks.
I will. You too. Okay.
Thanks, love. Bye. And now a word from my lower self. Last Monday, Anthony Weiner, former charismatic but arrogant Democratic congressman, former New York City front-running mayoral candidate, former husband of Hillary Clinton's chief aide Huma Abedin, former young man with a bright, even national political future, yes, that Anthony Weiner, was sentenced to 21 months in prison, followed by 3 years supervised release and permanent registration as a sex offender. This was after he had pled guilty last May to transmitting obscene material to a minor, a 15-year-old girl. On hearing the sentence, Weiner buried his face in his hands and sobbed. In pleading for no jail time, his defense attorney had argued unsuccessfully that Weiner's life was already in ruins, his career and marriage destroyed, and his public humiliation total, adding that Weiner was hard at work in therapy to free himself from a severe case of sex addiction. But in handing down the sentence, federal court judge Denise Cote noted Weiner's repeated penchant for exchanging sexual messages and claiming he was in therapy, saying, quote, "This is a very strong compulsion, evidenced by the destruction of his career on 2 occasions," close quote. Normally, I am mushy over incarceration sentencing. Vengeance never restores balance. Besides, I've been in jail, albeit only for short periods and always for civil disobedience, but experience does change your perspective. Nevertheless, I think Weiner got off light. He could have drawn as long as 10 years. And in focusing on his own ruined, self-ruined life, what gets overlooked are the ruinous effects his behavior has had on other lives, like the 15-year-old girl and others who were the objects of his sexting, like the political future of the talented, dedicated Huma Abedin, like his own toddler son, whom Weiner inadvertently photographed lying beside his daddy, who was wearing only bulging underpants while he was sexting, a photo Weiner then posted online. Like the national disaster left in Weiner's wake when the FBI discovered copies of Abedin emails to Hillary on a laptop shared by the couple, which precipitated James Comey's reopening the email investigation 11 days before the election, and which, though nothing new was discovered, is believed by election experts like Nate Silver to have cost Hillary the White House and cost the country a Trump victory. Like the ensuing effect of Trump in power, Weiner's orgasm cost the rest of us a lot. So sorry about the lack of mercy, and to hell with the sobbing, Anthony. Your narcissism, sense of male entitlement, arrogance, sexual abuse of others, and lies brought more than your own self down, and the harm you did will continue long after 21 months. And we need to take that final pause here, but I, Robin Morgan, and Women's Media Center Live will be back directly with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. Spartacus keeps getting reborn, changing race and gender and context. Last year, former San Francisco 49ers star quarterback Colin Kaepernick refused to stand during the pre-game playing of the Star-Spangled Banner to protest wrongdoings against African Americans and other people of color. He joined athletes like the NBA's Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, who were in turn following the lead of the WNBA players, women at the forefront of protests over issues of race, violence, and policing, and in support of Black Lives Matter. But the anthem, that touched a nerve, and Kaepernick still has not been signed to a team. Punishment for that nonviolent political act, in bitter contrast to wrist slaps the owners and the NFL have delivered to players who were proven wife batterers, child beaters, and public brawlers, but who received one-game suspensions and finger-wagging rebukes. Still, Kaepernick's act had mostly faded from view until Donald Trump, desperate to deflect attention from his recent failures regarding North Korea, Puerto Rico, and the seemingly indestructible Obamacare, plus his inability to make Robert Mueller disappear, Donald Trump decided to resurrect the subject of athletes' rebellion at an Alabama speech. To whip his crowd into a frenzy, Trump screamed, "Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, 'Get that son of a bitch off the field right now. Out. He's fired.'" Colin Kaepernick's mother immediately tweeted, "Guess that makes me a proud bitch." I love that woman. Trump also encouraged offended fans to just walk out of stadiums after they paid for their tickets. Good luck with that, Donald. He said referees are ruining the game by calling 15-yard penalties for beautiful tackles. He blamed the moderating influence of referees' wives and claimed that it hurt the ratings. In trashing the NFL for being political and insufficiently violent for his Roman Colosseum tastes, Trump praised NASCAR as a different model. So in passing, let's note the demographics of these sports. 74% of NBA players are African American. 62% of NFL players are African American. As for NASCAR, there have been 4 African American drivers in the entire Cup history. Well, as we all know, Trump's tirade prompted a "welcome to the NFL" moment. The league responded with a statement from Commissioner Roger Goodell. That was followed by a wave of demonstrations as athletes across the league knelt, half-knelt, sat on the bench, linked arms, or declined to take the field during the anthem. In Sunday's first NFL game at Wembley Stadium in London, multiple players on both the Baltimore Ravens and Jacksonville Jaguars knelt during the anthem, but then stood for "God Save the Queen." In Nashville, singer Megan Lindsay knelt as she sang. The momentum was impressive. Other sports, professional, college, amateur, joined. The University of North Carolina said its NCAA championship men's basketball team would not go to the White House as planned. Coaches and owners, opportunists terrified of player walkouts, sometimes knelt or linked arms in solidarity with their players. Jaguars owner Shahid Khan, a backer of Trump during the 2016 campaign, locked arms with his team. Former Buffalo Bills head coach Rex Ryan, who'd campaigned for Trump, said he was pissed off by Trump's comments. New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, an early supporter of Trump during the 2016 campaign, expressed his disappointment with the Donald. "Well, it's too late, you hypocritical cowards who rant about patriotism, define manhood as brutishness, and send young men out to maim one another for the pleasure of other men who willingly line your pockets to watch the carnage. You helped create this monster that is Trump. You're also the kind of men who call feminists man-haters. Yet it wasn't feminists who barred athletes of color from American sports, and who, later, facing challenges from the Jackie Robinsons and Arthur Ashes, the Kenny Washingtons and Earl Lloyds, and who, on discovering a vast trove of talent that could be monetized and exploited, then sucked in black and brown youth, dangling the bait of a contract, the golden ticket, out of America's ghettos. It wasn't feminists who dangled large sums of money for the most talented among those youths, but never bothered to educate them about handling such wealth so they wouldn't wind up broken and penniless, which they did. It wasn't feminists who winked when the players began taking pain-killing and then performance-enhancing drugs, often pushed by the coaches so as not to miss a game or risk suspension or risk being traded. It wasn't feminists who devised a system where these human beings could be transferred and traded, for which Reed sold, between teams, unless they were a free agent, terms and behavior that this history-stained nation should regard with utter horror. It wasn't feminists who condoned, pardoned, and bailed out player after player who had brutalized his wife and girlfriend and kids, who kept such a valuable possession out of jail and away from counseling, and instead fed his frustrations, his infidelities, his ego, and always, always fed his availability to play. It wasn't feminists who buried anecdotal evidence about mood changes affecting judgment and impulse control, memory loss, tremors, blindness, and blackouts persisting long after retirement, until the anecdotal evidence grew into statistical proof, until the athletes began committing suicide by shooting themselves in the chest so as to leave their brains intact for research, began willing their brains to researchers after death, until that research surfaced showing severe brain damage from the skull being repeatedly, violently bashed over and over for the lip-smacking pornographic pleasure of the roaring crowd. Brain damage was diagnosed in 87% of donated brains of 202 football players, including all but one of 111 brains of National Football League athletes. CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, is the term for brain damage that occurs after repeated blunt impact. It occurs in college and high school football as well as among professional players. Aaron Hernandez, the former New England Patriot, suffered from acute CTE, but the NFL told him that playing was safe. He killed himself last April in the prison cell where he was serving a life without parole sentence for a 2013 murder. His death came hours before the Patriots visited the Trump White House to celebrate their latest Super Bowl victory. It wasn't feminists who killed him. And they call us man-haters? I leaned closer in to my TV screen to better see the faces of protesting players last weekend. As the cameras panned close-up after close-up, these large-bodied, over-muscled, physically powerful men were breathing in short gasps. Perspiration beaded their faces, but no one had played yet. No 50-yard dashes, no tackles. Then I realized they were panting and sweating with fear for the loss of livelihood, loss of a future, loss of their kids' education, maybe loss of their wives' respect. Or maybe they were doing this at the insistence of those very wives. They had been trained to face powerful men and to pledge a modern version of what gladiators of old called to the Caesar of that day, "We who are about to die salute you." Instead, in that moment, they were not saluting a Caesar, but defying one, and they were refusing to die for the enrichment of sadists. In that moment, they had found something else in each other, a new definition of manhood that made them more human. In that moment, watching them, I loved them as only a man-hater could. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter, and you can check out my website and blog at robinmorgan.net, and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.